Hey kids, and welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about a movie that my wife and I watched last night called Turning Red. It is becoming a controversial movie on the Disney Plus channel. Before we do that, please take some time to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends. That's the best way to get our information out there. Also, if you want some free cryptocurrency, I've got some links in the description. Also, you can buy some Scars and Stripes coffee using my affiliate link. So let's get to this movie, Turning Red. Okay, it's on Disney Plus. It's about this little girl named May May. My wife and I decided we were going to watch this because a good friend of ours was concerned when she watched it with her daughter. So we decided we were going to pre-watch this because she had mentioned that you should pre-watch it. And so we did. We pre-watched this movie called Turning Red about this young lady named May May. And from the beginning of the movie, it looked to me like she was experiencing her menstrual cycle. Now, I have 3 daughters, so I'm not scared to talk about that. However, this movie kind of goes in some weird places. It really does. I was busting out laughing at this movie. So was my wife. There were scenes that were inappropriate and crass. However, downright hilarious. They were actually scenes that were just well written. It's one of those movies that was so different than the norm that it was bound to get some criticism. So let's go back to the age appropriateness of this. It is a PG movie, so it's not a G-rated movie. And there are some themes in this. Now, we're talking about a young girl's sexuality. She's 13 years old. She's Canadian. Yeah, she's Canadian. What can we say about Canada? She's in Canada, so the entire environment's a little different. The culture's a little different as a U.S. person watching this. So we have to kind of take into account the way a different culture will look at something or how a character is written in that culture. This young lady has a very overbearing mom. There is this traumatic event that happens, and as it turns out, these traumatic events have happened in this family. Words that came to mind when I was discussing this with my wife were generational curses. So I thought this movie was all about a menstrual cycle, but it turned out to be a lot more about this family generational curse and this coming of age story. Now, the problem is the animation is amazing. I like the animation. I'm not a big fan of computer animation. Never have been. I liked Toy Story. I liked what they did. And I really haven't seen a whole lot since. But this movie definitely, in my mind, it really has this great, nice, clean animation style. And it reminds me of another animator I used to like a long time ago, named Charles Schultz. It has a very Peanuts vibe to it. So I think people my age, 30, 40, 50 years old, are going to see this connection to the Peanuts. And so there are a lot of big emotions happening. And they throw in some of this anime stuff, which is a little different. It's more cultural for our day. Again, the character's 13. May May is 13 years old in this story. And she is experiencing something that 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds experience. Something changing, something completely different in their body and in their life. And she has a good group of friends, and they get into trouble. The movie is not a movie you're going to pop in and say, hey, kids, act like this. But it is a great movie to maybe show a young lady when that happens. I don't think my daughter will have a hard time watching this movie as a 6-year-old because she is super smart. She has this vocabulary. She understands what a menstrual cycle is. She knows that she's going to experience that one day. She has words to describe her emotions. We definitely talk to our kids a lot, and they have words to use so they can communicate with us. A lot of families aren't doing that. So I would say this, guys. Dads, if you want to watch this movie, watch it by yourself first and ask a bunch of questions from some lady in your life. So if you don't have a lady in the house, I would suggest watching this with a friend. girlfriend, whatever. Watch it with a woman. Because there was a point in the movie as a man, I was like, oh, this makes sense. Oh, this makes sense. Oh, this makes sense. And all of a sudden they get to this monetization of her gift. And it got really weird for me because there was one scene where this boy says, I paid you to do this and you're going to do this. And it was because the theme is a little sexual, that kind of weirded me out a little bit. But it wasn't necessarily out of place if you could remove the sexuality from the menstrual cycle. And for men, that's a little harder to do because most of us don't talk about it. And especially if a man doesn't have a daughter. So I would say that this was a funny enough movie for an adult, a teenager. The character was 13. I think around that age is probably the perfect time to watch this movie. Probably not before she has her menstrual cycle, probably right after. Because again, it's written well. It's a funny story. There's some great dynamics. But it's not for the 6, 7, 8-year-old because they're not experiencing this change in their body. And we don't want to give them permission because this little girl acts out a lot. So you run the risk of showing this to a 6, 7-year-old and saying, oh, that's okay. And you don't want that. So kind of keep in mind that although the character Maymay's emotions were very, I think, in line with what I know about a female's body. And about their emotions. Again, I have 3 daughters, and I'm very in tune to trying to educate them about their own bodies. I want them to be very strong and very confident about themselves because confidence is everything. So dads, watch the movie, then watch it with your daughter because you are probably going to learn some stuff from them watching it because you're going to have questions. I had questions from my wife and my wife kept saying, that's not that. So just stop, just look at it. So also when you watch it with your kids, look at it as a way of harnessing your superpowers because that's what it ultimately ends up being. This womanhood that she's coming into is her superpower. And there are a lot of people complaining about the twerking and I was looking for the twerking and it happened. And I'm sorry and I'm sad to say that I could not stop laughing. It was probably one of the funniest scenes in the movie. And although I wouldn't want my daughter to do that to me or my wife, it was funny. And this is why I think this is more of a movie for a young lady who just experienced this. Because having watched this and being able to go through those raw emotions and saying, this is how you feel, that's okay. But to show it to someone before, to a young lady before, and then when she comes in, if you kind of make that connection to her in her head, when she gets to that age and goes through that, it kind of gives her permission to be kind of a little jerk. I'm not calling Maymay the character a jerk in this movie. A lot of people think she's a spoiled little brat and da-da-da-da. But in reality, she is a young little girl that is going through a lot of major changes in her life. And she has that overbearing mother and a kind of non-present dad. Although he does turn out to be an important role in this movie. In her eyes, he's kind of he's detached. He kind of just sits in the background. That character is actually fleshed out really well, and I'm really glad they did. So, parents, here's my advice. Watch this movie beginning to end with someone of the opposite sex so you guys can talk about this. And then watch it with your kids. And I think you're going to have a really good time. Get some popcorn. Nothing is gross in the movie, which is awesome. I think the Red Panda was a great way to be able to speak about this. And I'm okay with this movie, Disney. It has adult themes because you're talking about this girl coming of age. So if you take your small children and watch it, it's kind of like the parents that went to watch Deadpool with their little kids. It wasn't made for kids. This was made for probably a young lady about 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, kind of going through her change. And this is a great movie for that audience and for everyone who loves that young lady going through the change. And as a dad, that's us. We need to have the chocolate ready, right? We need to have the tissue. We need to have the hugs. We need to have whatever is necessary, not only for our daughters, but for our sons too. So go watch this movie. I think it was a great movie. I'm going to give it, if I have to give this movie a rating, and let's do 10 stars, I'm going to give this movie a solid 8. Great animation, an original story. It was a little controversial. There were some scenes that could have been a little better or better flushed out or explained a little better, and that's why I kind of took it away. But probably one of the better movies this year by Disney. So you may disagree. I would love to hear your disagreements in the comments and what you didn't like about the movie. And again, like I said, I don't think this is for a 6 and 7 year old. I think this movie is for a 13-year-old. May is 13. And the great thing is, it's a funny movie. It's a great movie for adults. It's a date night. Watch it with your spouse. It's better suited for that than it is for showing it to your 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. Anyway, again, I'll give it a solid 8. It was a great movie, and a well done movie. Make sure you go into it with an open mind and realize that this is actually someone telling a story that probably came from some real life issues that they had, and were able to put finally an original story on the screen. And I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of people saying it's not an original story, it's a remake of this, a remake. For what we have today and what's available, I'm going to call this one the best original story of 2022 so far. Until next time, work hard, be kind, and have fun.